Friends, I spent the last 2 weeks working on this IS-2 from Berlin 1945. This tank is full of rough metal textures that are waiting to be popped, so to say, with weathering effects, but you know what? They already got emphasized with the base coat and post shading, so it led me to an idea. How about we paint everything with acrylic paints first, and then apply the washes and weathering effects all in one go? Sounds like a plan to me, so let's add some chipping effects, paint all the details, stowage, and figures. The first step is gonna be chipping with these 4 paints, and the first step in this first step is the sponge method. The standard procedure is to quickly lay down the light colored chips and create a roadmap for steel chipping. Okay, we talked about this approach a few times already, but I realized a bunch of new things on this model. The veterans of this channel will remember how I spent 70 hours chipping a tiger with a paintbrush, and roughly the same time chipping a yak tiger, right? But then there was a time when I chipped an entire T-29 heavy tank in just 2 days. And guess what? I managed to chip this IS-2 in 1 day. So what does it all have to do with sponge chipping? Well, that's the whole trick. It makes the process faster. But as we all know, if you're not a sponge Jedi, the resulting light chips will probably not be perfect. That's okay though, because they can be further refined with a paintbrush. Either with the same light color, but that takes extra time, or they can be toned down with the dark steel chips, as we'll see in a moment. This entire process might seem like a mess to you at first, especially with what's coming up next, but you'll quickly see how it's all gonna be tied together very quickly. A medium gray acrylic paint is the perfect base coat for exposed steel surfaces. This area where the fender was torn off the hull is gonna look pretty interesting once the enamel rust washes are applied. Pretty much every spot with some missing component can be treated this way, but not only those, because I'm also gonna paint every detail on this model. So the same color can be used on the metal tow cables, which will also receive rusty and dusty washes in the next video. And although they're not metal, electric cables will stand out nicely if you pick them out with a gray paint. The next one is silver, a very unusual color I know, but you know where it can be used. Welds on tanks don't rust, and they can keep their shiny quality even years after the tank was decommissioned, which leads to pretty nice, contrasting effects on our models. Shiny chipping can highlight and improve otherwise boring weld beads from the kit, or it can make your meticulously reworked and re-sculpted welds pop. At this stage, I felt confident to go a little overboard because the pin washes in the next episode will tone most of the effect down. The inside of the busted headlight was also painted in this color, although here it doesn't look completely authentic. And after I was done with the silver color, I grabbed the light green again and highlighted every bolt and tiny detail on the tank, so they wouldn't become dark stains after the pin washing stage. Alright, now we're getting to the main event that will tie all of these effects together. It's my usual chipping recipe: 4 drops of dark rust, 3 drops of drying retarder, and 1 drop of tap water. And of course a tiny 000 paintbrush from Vallejo. We really need that pointy tip. Now I can get back to what I started talking about during the sponge chipping, making the whole process more streamlined and time efficient. So we have the roadmap created by sponge chips, and some metal details and places with exposed steel painted in a grey color. All we have to do now is to fill most of the light green chips with this dark steel color, and also outline some of the most worn down edges. Well, I've been aware that the chipping I've been creating on some of my recent models is nowhere near as refined as it used to be a year or 2 years ago, but actually I'm totally fine with it because here's the thing. First of all, enamel rust washes always blend and sort of refine even the roughest looking chips. And second, every model you've seen on this channel had about a half of the chipping disappear under layers of dust and mud. And there's another more practical reason. 2 years ago I was building standalone models, right? No dioramas, figures or stowage. They were basically a gallery of weathering effects. But if you add stuff to your model, let's say the aforementioned stowage, crew figures and a scenic base, you increase your workload. So how do you find balance if you want to spend the same amount of time on one model? Well, if you add something, then you need to take something away. In my case, it was the time spent on chipping. And there's of course the last thing. The more you practice something, the more efficient you'll become. So here's the model all banged up. I hope my philosophical ramblings made sense, and hopefully, if you struggle with chipping in some way, some of the insights might help you. This is not the first time when I started the fine painting process with chipping, and the model could now receive a pin wash and rust effect treatment, but we'll paint everything with acrylics in this episode. And what does that mean? Everything that is paintable with acrylics, if we follow the standard routine, you know. So let's start with the easiest stuff, hard stowage. Hard stowage in my language is everything that's either made out of metal or wood. Stuff that's not squishy and we can paint it using the same principles as our tanks. Here I felt extra fancy, so I added a small label on this oil canister. Is it accurate? Definitely not, but I like the extra detail that it adds to the model. I also tried airbrushing Vallejo acrylics again, and to my delight, they spray extremely well when they're diluted with VMS acrylic thinner. These metal details need just a base coat and a quick round of chipping. Everything else will be carried out with washes and rust tones, just like on the tank. I tried painting everything to look as civilian as possible because, well, reference photos from Berlin show exactly that. I just hope it won't make the tank too colorful for our liking. Wooden crates are also hard stowage, and I have a very simple method for them. Every wooden surface starts its life with a blackish brown base color. Then I apply a darker wood tone in this reasonably hasty manner, creating some initial wood texture without going too overboard with the fine details. The second layer is much lighter, and note how I'm applying it towards the center of the box, creating some sort of subtle shading along the way. This is all you need for an interesting wooden surface, but because I was trying to add more contrast, especially since the rolled blanket next to it had similar color, I gave it a few glazes with a generic brown color. This adds another interesting layer, but I still wasn't satisfied. So my final solution was to add some remnants of paint, but as I quickly realized, a vivid green box wasn't standing out too much on a completely green tank. My solution? Either repaint it completely or give it another layer of color. And I think this doesn't look too bad in the end. Okay, soft stowage is the hard part, or where things are not so easy because we can't rely on armor painting techniques anymore. This is a process I'm constantly learning, be it while painting more and more stowage or when I'm painting figures. Here I'm using something I currently find very efficient. Once again, starting with a black-brown base coat and then painting the actual color of the tarp in a few diluted layers. Once that is established, I apply a few layers of highlights on the most pronounced folds, giving it a nice three-dimensional look. The dark undercoat takes care of the shadows, and if you apply the base color carefully, you can use it to sort of outline the cloth, making places where the tarp is folded on itself more visible, even from a longer viewing distance. Most of the time it's a very simple process, and the black-brown works with most colors, except for grey, where I use pure black as the shadow layer. But every other tarp was painted in the same way. This one was Prussian blue for the base, and I added deck tan for highlights. This one is Middlestone as a base, and Iraqi sand for highlights. Khaki grey and Iraqi sand for the rolled up tarp, and field grey and sunny skin tone for the one behind it. Iraqi sand and deck tan for the box in the cloth, bronze green and sunny skin tone for the one under the suitcase. One of the boxes was painted using the wooden method, so to say, and the other in grey tones with some wooden chipping. And this milk can was stippled with various greys and finished off with silver for that zinc-plated look. Okay, the suitcases have their own unique finish, so let's see how to paint some leather. Well, I'm no leather painting expert, but this method seems efficient enough and convincing enough for my purposes. You start with a black base and dry brush dark rust very hastily, covering most of the surface. Then you keep making it lighter by adding more and more orange brown. And with each layer you employ both dry brushing and stippling, which will add some random worn texture. This can be repeated until you're left with pure orange brown, and then it's time to switch to more refined techniques. I started adding some wear and tear using a fine brush, focusing in mostly on the edges. At this point, I'm making the orange brown lighter with Iraqi sand. Most of the weathering, if we can call it that, is about fine scratches in the leather and some random chipping effects or stippling here and there. Those are the places where the leather cracked and started flaking off. The final layer is pure Iraqi sand, and I used it to make the worn edges more pronounced. But also, if the paint is heavily diluted and the brush unloaded, it can be used for those random scratches. The finish is all over the place, I know, but the glaze makes it more natural. You can use pure black or dark gray, as they both give the leather a greasy, weathered finish, while also unifying all the different textures. It's very easy to overdo this step, so I recommend taking a good look at the surface after each pass. Details also make a huge difference, and here I went with black on the edges because these can be either metal or, I don't know, something else that's not leather. And the locks and hinges were carefully picked out with silver. So that's the finished suitcase. Something that has a huge impact on the result is how the suitcase is sculpted and how well it's cast from resin. These were honestly not excellent, so there are some flaws, but overall, I'm not disappointed. This method is so effective and efficient that it can be employed on figures, if they have some leather on them, of course. The worn texture is very easy to replicate on all those folds, but understandably, it's not almighty. Dry brushing doesn't pick out highlights in a natural way, and some controlled brush application was required here, sort of expanding those lights and building more natural color transitions. This tanker has a quote-unquote captured leather jacket, yep, go figure, which is a pretty nice touch. I mean, yep, well played, Panzer Art, well played. The rest was carried out using my traditional black and white pre-shading followed up with glazing. It's a very simple method and it's become my routine while painting figures. The second figure from Alpine has this fluffy uniform that's full of details and textures. It was a blast to paint, especially highlighting every detail. And do you wanna know the best part? Previously, I used to spend about 5 days painting 2 figures. And these boys, well, they took me 6 or, 7 hours each. All because it was Friday and I was going to my best friend's bachelor party for the weekend. Yeah, talk about being efficient. So, that's gonna be it for this week, my friends. If you ever wondered how a tank might look like with every detail painted but with no weathering, here's your answer. I'm sure it's one of the top 5 questions nobody ever asked, but it was a fun experiment that ultimately won't impact the finished model because everything will get tied together in the next video, where I'll apply pin washes, rust effects, and weathering in the form of earth tones and various grimy goodies. I think some of that will be more complicated because the paint and stowage will kinda get in my way. Normally I like to paint that kind of stuff after a few weathering steps, but I think it'll be alright. So anyway, until then, I wanna say thank you for watching, my friends, and also thank you to my patrons who make this show possible. If you like what I'm doing, wanna get more of it, and in return support my work, you can go to my Patreon page and see what kind of rewards would you like. I'm posting there almost every day with updates from my workbench. We can get in touch through DMs, comments, and emails. I'm posting 1 week early ad-free videos, so you could watch the next video right now. Also these beautiful studio photos, which you can download in full resolution. And last but not least, some real-life references for dioramas, sceneries, and landscapes. Yeah, and of course, small 3D models for detailing your tanks and dioramas. Okay, so now I can put the wet palette away and grab some enamels and oil paints. Washes and rust tones feel like a holiday after you're done with the precise brush painting and chipping, but the weathering might get tricky on this one. I'm not sure, but I'll find out very soon. So yeah, that's gonna be it, and you, my friends, stay safe, stay awesome, build your models, don't just collect them, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!